Well, greetings, visitors to the paper prison. It is I, your host, the Comics Prisoner. And I want to thank you for taking the time out to visit me on this special visiting day as we take a look at what I consider to be some of the greatest examples of black and white comic art in the comics business. And I'm going to tell you why I feel this way. All right, these pages, which I'm currently captivated in, come from Rampaging Hulk #9. It's the backup story in that magazine. It's a Shanna the She Devil story, Marvel's answer to Sheena of the Jungle, and it is created by two exceptional comics talents. This is a great story because one, it's written by one of my favorite, if not my favorite writer in the comics industry, Steve Gerber, and illustrated by Tony DeZuniga. Now, Mr. DeZuniga may not have been my favorite growing up because I just didn't think he worked in superheroes. But you get him into anything other than superheroes, and he sings. First off, I want to talk a little bit about Mr. DeZuniga. He was part of the Filipino invasion, so to speak, in the starting from the early '70s, maybe around 1970. Probably driven by Dick Giordano and Roy Thomas. But I do have something of a connection to this because Tony had a studio which he called the Tribe, and the fellow that I apprenticed under, Bob Downs, was part of the Tribe, and he actually worked on doing backgrounds on this job. Now, I really think Tony threw every trick he knew into these pages. I think he knew it was black and white. He knew there was no color, so he knew he had to throw all the bells and whistles of black and white in there. So we're just gonna actually start off on I think about the third page here, where Shanna has a pet boa constrictor, and kind of like her version of the danger room for mutants is that she wrestles and struggles with this boa constrictor. Um, Here she is going at it, and yes, you could say this is good girl art to be charitable, and to be uncharitable, you could call it prurient. But I just saw what Chapel Roan wore to the Grammys, and I'm just wondering what is prurient anymore. We seem to be living in a world of contradictions. But let's just go back to the artistry here. As you can see, Mr. DeZuniga is making this not be a flat piece of 2D black and white ink on paper art. Uh, he he's using every kind of medium to make grays. I look at some of this and I see, cross hatching with black ink. I see, silhouettes like of the plants against what would be white, if except I think I can't tell if the background is a wash or there was this thing called duotone board where it had an invisible tone in it, and if you washed it with a chemical, the tone would come out gray, and if you washed it with another chemical, the lines would go a different way. So you could get two different things out. But what I'm seeing a lot in this job is overlapping of zips with grays or overlapping of zips. And there's a clear like white to dark to white zipatone that he's working on. He's putting on the boa constrictor to make it look like there's more there than what has been drawn. Like there's plants that are not visible, not visibly drawn, and it's dropping shadows across the boa constrictor's body. The back of the boa constrictor is coming out of shadow, and parts of his body is coming into the light, and then other parts are going around in shadow, maybe even falling under its own shadow. Wonderfully drawn there. Now let's look at Shanna's body here, which is expertly drawn. Now, did Tony have photo reference to go with this? Quite possibly. Not certain, but he still had to ink it, and the inks are masterful. And I'm looking at her back here. I've always been, um, I've always been very impressed by how Neil Adams could render a back and make these rippling muscles that were maybe sometimes faked, maybe not. Tony's doing the same thing here with Shanna's back, but it's a woman's back. It's a feminine back. It's not overly muscled, which would look at best unattractive, if not just distorted. The delicate renderings he does underneath her right thigh, ever so slightly turning the form, and then her hair, which we're going to be noting as we go along. The hair is the most expressionistic part of her body because sometimes he renders it as if it is like he's trying to do a representational photorealistic drawing of hair, and then sometimes the hair is this abstract shape that carries more power with it than just drawing a bunch every single strand would look. And of course, when we look in the background, we see very competent renderings of wood and fronds, and as I said, silhouettes of things that makes very good compositions. So why don't we I think I've waxed lovingly enough about that page. Let's go to I think it's actually the page after. Um, so Shayna's is now wrestling with the animal. Panel two, he makes it interesting by putting a graze over the face. So panel three, it looks like he's using a coquille board. So he's putting in another texture. Coquille board rendering of the face as best he can. And I really like when he does these reverse silhouettes, like the snake is a white silhouette. So, so we're going to jump over a couple of pages. And this is a page that I, again, have kind of more of a connection with because my mentor, Bob Downs, actually drew a lot of this page with the backgrounds. He drew that Range Rover, SUV, and the backgrounds there. And Bob would make me laugh a little because he would always point out that that Range Rover is out of proportion with the background. And this is what I think is really what's going on here, is that it's not part of that background. The Range Rover is breaking up that one top panel into three different panels. So the top part with the woman standing in front of her house is really part of would be considered one panel. The Range Rover driving along is another panel, and the woman speaking with another great drop shadow using grays across her face. Once again, Tony doing everything he can to make black and white interesting. She's the third panel. And having elements break one panel into three panels happens a lot here. And again, he's just doing everything he can to make a job for an audience that has been conditioned to only accept color be satisfied with a job without color. Okay, so we're going to go a couple pages in, and once again, we have a really great background, probably done by Bob, of a mall that is based on the Taj Mahal. It's the Taj Mahal Mall. So we get a little bit of India without having to go to India. So just take a look at that. And we're going to go on and to the next page. So anyway, going back, I really love this motif of a superhero with a psychiatrist. And you would think, gee, how would that work? I mean, supposedly the only way to get help from a psychiatrist is to be totally forthcoming with your life and your problems. But most superheroes have secret identities. But also remember, these psychiatrists live in a world with the Avengers and the Fantastic Four, and Galactus almost ate the world. So they would probably be pretty open. Going back to Tony's masterful storytelling abilities, I love on the bottom third where the psychiatrist's arm is breaking into the scene with Shayna on her couch, and then when you go outside, it's another panel, but it's it's just subtle enough. It doesn't cause a cognitive dissonance about the arm wouldn't look that way from that angle. It's two different angles, and it's a good kind of cognitive dissonance. It's a stimulation. It's not a confusion. Once again, what good on you, Mr. DeZuniga. So we're going to skip over a page where Shayna gets upset with her psychiatrist, and she barges out early. So the bad guy we saw earlier had sent assassins to kill her, so she jumps out the window, going down fire escapes. Again, great composition here. She's going down the fire, so the left side of the panel, which it's always a mixed bag when you use arrows to direct the reader's eyes for them, but I think in this case it was necessary. So um, he's she's coming down the fire escape, and it's kind of like having two large vertical panels next to each other. And by not connecting the panel, like it's helping the illusion. She's busting out of the panel, come down the fire escape in the middle, busting back into a panel as the assassins follow, and then she's busting out at the very bottom of the panel, and then we go back up to the top, and it's the start of the next long vertical panel. And I think unfortunately, it needed just a little bit of help from Gerber to explain what's going on or what phase of the pursuit is going on. But Shayna throws her cover up onto him and punches him, and just great drawing, great storytelling, great composition. And remember when I said in that very bottom on the left side where Shayna is leaping out of the panel as well as leaping off the fire escape. See, her hair isn't drawn as hair. It's like this abstract shape that has a will and a life of its own. I think that's why it's all white. It's like it's on fire with life. So I think that's pretty cool. Okay, so that's enough there. And this next one, I'm just putting in for the top panel because, all right, our bad guy's face is clearly photo reference from some guy, and he only marginally looks like the face of the villain that has been drawn up till this point. But it's close enough, and you accept it because it's so masterful and so photorealistic, and you appreciate it as art. So you're going to just accept it, and I think it's just a kind of a peek into the the decisions someone has to make when they're trying to hit deadlines and they're using every resource at their command. So I just like that drawing of that face, and that's why we have it. So anyway, the next page, Shayna busts out, and again we see a lot of we see use of actual zip, a parallel line zip in the middle tier. But Shayna, again, here we have like where he makes two panels work together on the third and fourth. No, that would be fifth and sixth. Sorry. So Shayna is leaping at the bad guys. She has a black background, almost turning her into a silhouette. But the bad guys are in silhouette. But they also make a white background for the next panel where she's either fighting some of the bad guys or some are running away in terror. They become black silhouettes running into the white silhouettes. Thinking. He's always thinking, trying to make this stuff interesting. Again, he has an audience that has been conditioned to only appreciate color work by this point. So he's doing everything he can to make it palatable to them. So, and finally, the last page was Shayna triumphant. So she is either beaten or ran off the killers of Kali. And again, this top first panel is he's using elements to break one panel into two, even though we have one element working in two. So in the first one, you have Shayna on the far left, threatening our bad guy who's brandishing a sword. And then on the right of him, there's a silhouette of her interacting with the same figure from the first panel. So our figure here breaks the panel into two. Really great. All right, so and and speaking of silhouettes, silhouettes are such a great element tool to use. Stan Lee always would tell Jack Kirby to integrate a silhouette into every page. Like something like this, small but helps tell the story. So Shayna grabs hold of the sword, pulls it out of the guy's hand. That's a very dramatic picture in the middle of the page where she drops the sword in her hand bleeding. But you look at her face, and again, he it looks like he's using that. He's either using that duotone board where you paint the hair with that special chemical, and wherever you paint, it'll turn gray, or maybe he did it in a gray tone and then turned it into a half tone. I don't know. So again, the last panel in the middle tier, when she kicks the bad guy, her hair is not drawn photorealistically. It's an abstract shape that just has a fire of its own. And finally, we go back to Chekhov's gun. When you pull out the gun in the first act, it better be fired by the third act. The boa constrictor is back, and she says, "Why do I find it sad that a constrictor must kill its own prey?" So instead of killing the bad guy, she just let the snake take care of him. So no blood on her hands. Yeah, right. So this was really the only Shane of the she devil story I've ever read, but it made me really interested in her. Um, I didn't really see her again until she showed up as Kazar's girlfriend, which really diminished her. I want to see her come back in her own solo story. But I hope you'll all agree with me that this was an incredible showcase of black and white art and an interesting, unique, singular story. Well, that's it for now. I hope you all enjoyed this, and I hope to see you next time. And maybe I'll know what I'm going to do next time. And until then, please like, share, and subscribe. I hope you enjoyed this one, and we hope to see you next week. So until next time, bye bye and bye comics.